so I make all of my recipes in this very spacious kitchen. Hi everyone, my name is Aaron Hutcherson. I'm a food blogger, writer, and recipe developer based in New York City. And welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be cooking through my life. I'm going to show you a few different recipes that have helped inform and shape my style of cooking, and they have gotten me to where I am today. I was one of those kids that just sort of spent all of my free time in the kitchen. Grew up eating a lot of soul food, like fried chicken was a regular occurrence in my household. So that's sort of how I first fell in love with food. Early on, always asking my mom if I can help. In the beginning, it was me putting the chicken in the flour and shaking it up. I would always sort of just grab all these different types of spices and seasonings and sprinkle it all over there, and her refrain would always be, "Don't mess up my meat." I don't think I ever actually messed it up now that I think about it, but I remember there were definitely a few times "Oh, what'd you put in this?" This is what I'm talking about. It's nice and very thoroughly seasoned. Flip it over, do the same on the other side. I feel like I've been frying chicken my entire life, so it's sort of a good representative of the early stages of my love for food. Other key step is we're going to do the same thing in terms of adding the same seasonings to the flour. I always just eyeball it as you see. You should be able to see a decent amount of sort of dispersion of the spices. Take the chicken, toss it in the seasoned flour, then shake off excess. Ta-da! Ready to fry. You can use any sort of oil for frying, but I added in some reserved fat for extra flavor. Drop in some flour to make sure it's nice and hot. It should sizzle a little bit. So that is how to make nice golden fried chicken. Sort of watching people and the looks on their faces as they take a bite and hear the crisp is just it brings me joy. It makes me smile inside and outside. So this kale salad is one that I learned from my restaurant days as a line cook. I worked in a restaurant called Northern Spy Food Company, and I have literally made tens of thousands of these kale salads. After I left the restaurant, I didn't want to really look at a kale salad again up until, let's just say, it took a while. So for this recipe, we always use lacinato kale, which is also called dinosaur kale or Tuscan kale. You can see it sort of looks, I guess, like what a dinosaur's skin might look like. But then I'm just taking the tough rib out, bend it around, and then pull. It comes out pretty easily. I had a love of food from the very beginning, but I never really thought of it as a career. After a couple of years of working on Wall Street, I decided to go to culinary school. I quit my job, and then I started working at a restaurant. Lemon vinaigrette. It's just lemon juice, olive oil, some salt. In theory, I would have a pepper grinder, but no. I'm just gonna sort of eyeball it. The sort of important step in the salad is to massage the kale. So that helps to break down some of the tough fibers. It should be nice and coated. It's nice and shiny now. And then of course, taste. So I went to culinary school without ever really wanting to work in a restaurant. I wanted to go into media and do things like this. That year working in the restaurant was sort of the hardest I've ever worked in my life. And I think a lot of people, unless you've worked in a restaurant, you have no clue. It taught me a lot about how to think about food and people and where your food comes from and how you serve people. And I'm glad I did it. Don't think I'd go back. That is the kale salad. Sort of my first intro to professional cooking. All right, it's cookie time. Early on, even before culinary school, I started blogging and sharing my recipes and my kitchen adventures with the world. That was almost 11 years ago at this point, which is pretty crazy to think about now. What started as just a silly hobby has definitely sort of transformed into, my blog is very much a part of my career these days. I posted these cookies a couple weeks ago, and these are my quarantine cookies. earlier in quarantine, I was going through the grocery store, and of course there was no all-purpose flour, but I came upon rye flour, and I was like, what can I do with this? So I thought, oh, cookies. I think it works well because it has like a certain sour nuttiness that goes really well with the chocolate and the sugar, and just adds another layer of dimension to your standard chocolate chip cookie. So when it comes to my cooking, I am all about trying to be as practical as possible while also maximizing flavor. It'll look like this. A lot of cookie recipes ask you or tell you to sort of chill the cookie dough overnight. I think the rye flour helps to give that extra je ne sais quoi that sort of chilling the dough overnight will add, but without that step, and gives you sort of cookies within 30 minutes realistically. Now you have your chocolate chip cookie dough. If you roll it a little bit with your hand, that like smooths out all the like little individual nooks and crannies. I like to also just press them so that it sort of evenly spreads out. Last but not least is a little bit of flaky salt. Bye bye. So someone the other day sort of tweeted at me and was like, I love your recipes because they're familiar, but they are always a little bit different. And I think that sort of describes them perfectly. I want it to be familiar and approachable, but also maybe teach you something different or like introduce you to a different ingredient. So it's a nice little puddle of chocolate. It's still a little warm. I like, honestly though, you need another cookie recipe in your life, but that's just me. Alright folks, so thanks for following along. You can find me on the internet at The Hungry Hutch everywhere. And we just cook my life.